Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Drones LP, I See Seaweed. The Drones are an Australian rock outfit. They've been at it for well over 10 years now, and they have about 10 studio and live albums under their belts to show for it, as well as an Australian Music Prize, which they won in 2005 thanks to one of their full lengths. And this band's earliest material had a really rough and wild garage rock and blues punk sound, but they eventually kind of mellowed out on later releases such as Gala Mill. Even though the Drones have shown some real progression over the course of their career, they're not really in the same spot they used to be. The roots of the band are still very much intact, because that punk blues garage rock sound rings in really true on one track on here, A Moat You Can Stand In, which is this 4-minute barn burner, manic vocals, pounding piano chords. The track is hard as nails. It's like the amplifiers are on fire once they kind of get into this interlude, I guess you could say. It's a whole lot of noise, really. It's at points like this that the energy that this band displays, as well as the very snide vocals, the blaring guitars, fans of other Aussie garage rock acts like Eddie Kerr and Suppression Ring could totally get into what this album has to offer. But the slower tracks on here that are a little more dismal, with a lot of sullen vocals and very dark, gloomy narratives, people who are totally into Nick Cave, maybe a little bit of PJ Harvey, could enjoy this album as well. Most of the other songs on this LP might not be as cutthroat, but they kind of display their intensity in other ways, through a lot of angry, sad, and sometimes hopeless feelings. And to build on top of that, the songs on this album, which are very good, are typically really expansive, sitting within that 6 to 9 minute mark. And though I do think a lot of these tracks are interesting instrumentally throughout, it's really the band's frontman Gareth Lydiard that keeps me sitting on the edge of my seat listening to the words he's saying and listening to his very emotive, dramatic, and sometimes over-the-top vocal delivery. Different tracks on this LP have different feels to them, like the opener on this album, the title track, I See Seaweed, which really to me kind of feels like this dark, very eerie, ominous start to the entire album. It's like listening to a storyteller warn the listener, warn the traveler that you're about to embark upon a very dark adventure. Very shy pianos and guitars make dramatic sounds behind Gareth's vocals, just increasing the intensity and the tension of the story he's telling, which has imagery of stepping into our swamp. And the chorus on this track is just explosive. It's bombs. It's the storm that the verses were forecasting. The band has a real appreciation for instrumental dynamics, huge spots, small spots, subtle intros, giant climaxes. It's to the point where shorter songs on this LP, which were lead singles like How to See Through Fog, while I did like this track as a hook to initially listen to this LP, it just feels like a morsel compared to some of the other just long, monolithic, and intense songs on this album. A track like this to me is a good tune, but maybe not as explosive and as exciting as other songs on this album. And emotionally and sonically, there are spots on here like They'll Kill You, which are very explosive, but the tune is just not there. The vocals melodically meander in a way that is not memorable at all. Thankfully, these two tracks are like the biggest missteps on the LP. After these songs, the track The Great Leader drops this really heavily, emotionally potent ballad in 3. Things just feel so rickety, they feel so noisy, they feel like they're just barely being held together. But things sort of clean up in a way after this instrumental interlude pops in quickly after the first third of the track. It introduces this guitar riff which just explodes and soars over this very down in the dumps song, and it feels, in a way, kind of Pink Floydian. And the end of the song with Gareth screaming these mantra-like lyrics, "Nothing will ever change your mind." He feels so hopeless at this point in the track, especially with how he is freaking out vocally on the song. The next track, LAIKA, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think the song title is a reference to the Russian space dog. And if it is, the melody, the opening guitar leads, which are harmonized on the start of the track, have kind of an Eastern Bloc flavor to them. This song brings even more drama to the table, and a good tune as well. It kind of takes me back to that opening track on the album where you're getting this really snide vocal. And the last track on this LP, the 9-minute track, is just a killer killer and sad, depressing ballad, and the perfect ending. I actually think it's one of the more cinematic closing tracks I've heard this year. It's kind of a piano-led track, and Gareth really lets his lyrics stand out on this song, singing about how people don't really write letters anymore, but my friend wrote something like a letter the other day. Let me tell you what it said, talking about how he saw it or read it in his inbox at 3 a.m. And believe me, it's more depressing than what I'm making it out to be. There's all this imagery of diving into an ocean, I guess figuratively, just bad dreams, days just kind of passing you by, losing one's aspirations. There are these very pretty, youthful female chorus vocals that pop in to kind of break the ice a little bit, but then it's right back into the second verse, which is even more intense and longer than the first. There's this sentiment in the song of wanting to make the world a less painful place. It's an intense track. I keep using that word to describe songs on this LP. Maybe it's the word I say the most throughout this album, but it's a well-deserved word. While I don't think this album is terribly innovative or original or breaking new ground or anything like that, I feel like everything this album tried to do succeeded at it in such a big way that it can't help but be, sort of bowed to, in my opinion. Maybe Gareth isn't the most, I guess, sort of stand out, totally pick him out of a lineup no matter what vocalist, but this album throughout had very tight, interesting instrumentation, some nice interplay, great recording, heavy sounds and noises, a lot of detail, richness, lushness, sharpness, memorable songs, potent emotions, and very good lyricism too when Gareth sort of steps up his game and tries to put out something a little more detailed. I'm pretty much feeling a light to decent 8. And if you've given this thing a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And yeah, that's it. Anthony Fantano, The Drones, forever.